To most people, it looked abandoned. The paint was cracked and faded. Several windows were covered with wooden boards. The once beautiful garden had turned into a wild jungle of weeds and overgrown bushes. But when I stood in front of that house, I didn't see decay. I saw potential. I imagined the grand staircase polished again, sunlight pouring through the stained glass windows, and the sound of footsteps echoing across restored floors. The house had a story, and I wanted to be the one who brought it back to life. Buying it took almost everything I had saved. It was a huge risk, and everyone around me told me I was crazy, but I didn't care. The woman selling the house was elderly. Her family had built the mansion generations ago. When she handed me the keys, she smiled and said she was happy the house would finally belong to someone who cared about it. Before I left, she casually mentioned that the neighborhood around the mansion had been developed years later, and technically my property was inside their development area. But she assured me my home was older than all of it and was grandfathered in, meaning their neighborhood rules didn't apply to me. I learned skills I had never imagined. I figured out how to repair plaster, restore woodwork, and even bring old windows back to life. Some nights I worked until midnight, covered in dust and paint, but I loved every second of it. Slowly, the mansion started to transform. The old, dull exterior was repainted in a beautiful vintage cream color with dark green trim. The porch was rebuilt piece by piece. The garden was replanted with roses, hydrangeas, and flowers inspired by old photographs. Little by little, the mansion started to breathe again. Friends who once laughed began to admit it was becoming something incredible. For me, it wasn't just a house anymore. It had become my sanctuary. Then one Tuesday afternoon, a letter arrived. It was a bright white envelope with an official-looking logo. At first, I almost tossed it in the trash, assuming it was an advertisement. But when I opened it, my stomach dropped. It was a letter from the Neighborhood Homeowners Association. The message was polite but firm. According to them, the exterior color, the vintage cream paint, was not approved. They claimed my antique mailbox violated their neighborhood standards. I actually laughed when I finished reading it. My house had been standing there for 100 years, long before their neighborhood existed. So I calmly wrote them a letter explaining the situation. One included copies showing my land was not part of their association. I assumed that would settle the misunderstanding. It didn't. A week later, another letter arrived. This one was much less friendly. It listed violations including my garden, my fence, and even the lights on the porch. At the bottom was a bill for $500 in fines. That was the moment I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. I called the phone number. A woman answered, her voice sharp and cold. She insisted my property was under their authority because of a recent county rule. When I asked for proof, she refused to give details. Instead, she simply told me to pay the fines and make the changes. I refused. That's when the conflict truly began. Over the following weeks, the letters kept coming, each one with new violations and higher fines. 500, 2,000, 5,000. They demanded I replace my historic windows with vinyl ones. They told me to remove my roses and plant the same shrubs used in the neighborhood. It felt like they were trying to erase the very character that made the house special. Eventually, I hired a lawyer. He confirmed exactly what I believed. My home was not part of their HOA. He sent them a formal legal notice demanding they stop. For a short time, everything went quiet. I thought the situation had finally ended. Then one morning, there was a knock at my door. A sheriff's deputy was standing there holding a stack of papers. He looked uncomfortable as he explained the situation. The HOA had placed a lien on my property for unpaid fines. The total had now reached $50,000. Even worse, they were attempting to foreclose. The deputy quietly suggested I contact the local media and historical groups. He said something about the situation didn't feel right. That night, I started sending emails. I contacted reporters, historical societies, and community groups. Within hours, people began responding. The next day, a local news crew showed up at the mansion. They filmed the restored porch and stained glass while I told the story. That evening, the story aired on television. What happened next was something I never expected. The community exploded with support. People were furious that a homeowners association was trying to destroy a historic house. The story spread online and thousands shared it. Comments flooded the HOA as social media pages. The pressure was overwhelming, and suddenly the HOA went completely silent. Days later, a letter arrived from the county attorney's office. After reviewing the situation, they concluded the HOA had no legal authority. The county confirmed the rule they cited didn't even exist. The lien was removed immediately. An investigation into the HOS actions began. Within a week, the HOA president resigned from her position as the scandal grew. A few weeks later, I stood on the front porch watching the sunset. The cream-colored walls glowed in the evening light. The roses were blooming, and the house that had survived 100 years of history was still standing strong. The battle had been exhausting, but it proved something. Sometimes protecting history means standing up to people who try to control what they don't understand. This mansion had survived time, storms, and neglect, and now it had survived an HOA.